I discovered your stuff through Shreds, the fitness YouTuber, the whole, meme with him as he kind of looks like a Greek god. The average man can't do a pull-up. I don't know if you know that.
I didn't know that until I started working out.
And it looks like you got into a really crazy car accident.
Yeah. So what was happening was, that's a warranted criticism, right? You can be caring more about the physicality than the spirituality.
Yeah.
I think the body and the soul and the mind are connected, right? If you're...
Bro, it's not as easy as you think. Like, here's my life and it sucks. And you're telling me to go to the gym. Like, cool story, bro.
Ruslan.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am here with Paul Apani. He put out a book that I've found extremely valuable for many people today, as we live in a very sedentary environment. A lot of people aren't moving. A lot of people aren't taking their body seriously. It is called Muscular Christianity, and exploring the premise of your body being a temple of God, so on and so forth. He has an actually interesting story of stuff that's happened after this book has came out that has been challenging to his own fitness journey, and we're going to be getting into all of that and some of the concepts from the book. Paul, thank you so much for being here, brother.
Thank you for having me, man.
So you're from Canada?
Yeah, I'm from Canada, yeah.
Calgary?
Yep, Calgary.
The middle?
Yeah.
North of Montana?
Yeah.
Okay. And you put this out recently. This is a book is about a year old. Is that right?
I don't know if it's really recent, but it's been about a year.
Yeah.
It came out October of 2023.
Okay, that's recent. That's less than a year ago.
I guess that's recent.
Yeah.
I thought recent was maybe 6 months ago or something. But
okay, so let's start at the beginning. Can you just give us some context on the idea of muscular Christianity? Where are you pulling at it from a historical standpoint? And just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so muscular Christianity was actually a movement that was founded in the 1880s by this man named Thomas Hughes, I believe. He thought that Christianity was getting too soft and that they need to inject some kind of masculinity, some kind of virility, some vitality to it. So then they thought that they would get some guys into physical fitness, into sports specifically. They were really into boxing and football, like the hardy sports. And the YMCA, if you know about the YMCA, that was actually a product of muscular Christianity. And it got really popular when Theodore Roosevelt actually promoted it. He's one of probably the mascot for muscular Christianity, Theodore Roosevelt. So it really got really popular in the 1880s up until the 1920s. But then I think world wars happened and then it sort of put a halt to it. And then everyone just kind of forgot about it. And why I was interested in writing about it was because I started getting into physical fitness around the time I got into college. And I'm like, hey, this is really cool. And I was also reestablishing my relationship with God, getting much more Christian at the time, making the faith my own as opposed to my parents. That's sort of what you have to choose when you're in college, right? You got to choose either your parents' faith, are you going to follow your parents' faith, or are you going to blaze your own faith and make this really your own. At least that's how it was for me when I was in college. I was living by myself for the first time. And so I got really into that. And then I'm just the type of person who really likes to look for intersection between things. My YouTube channels are a lot like that too. I have 2 YouTube channels, and one of them I just sort of like a stream of conscious, sort of any sort of philosophical musings that I have at the time. I just sort of talk about, and the other one's a fitness channel. The philosophical musings one, I actually just talk about various TV shows and how they relate to God, because I'm just interested in the TV shows. I'm interested in Christianity, and I eventually just I like to mix things up and incorporate my disparate interests and try and coalesce them into something sensible and whole.
Got you.
So I just did that with my book. And then over time, the document that I was writing swelled to 30 pages long. I had a document called, what was it called now? It was called Things to Note, Things for the Future. And I would just write in there about things that I would think about in relation to anything. And then I was just really interested in this topic. So I just kept writing about it. That swelled to 30 pages. And I'm like, okay, no one else has really written a book on this.
Then you had a book before you know it.
And then, I just had a book, yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so I love the tie into the YMCA. You said the 1890s.
Yeah.
And also there's some Victorian influence as well in terms of that whole time frame, England, and that shaping the muscular Christianity movement.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because initially this is around sports and wanting to get boys active and give men structure through stuff like sports, which we still acknowledge, right?
Yeah.
Sports are good. Sports give people discipline. I don't know where I would be if I had basketball in 8th and 9th grade and just that consistency of showing up. So tell me the overlap that you found. It sounds like you came to faith and you came to fitness around the same time. Is that a fair parallel? Meaning that around the same time you're rediscovering your parents' faith, but now it's becoming your own. You're also getting into fitness.
Well, I should say physical fitness, as in like bodybuilding, like lifting weights.
Yeah.
That's when I started to really become more Christian. I was always into playing basketball and playing soccer. I played volleyball for a bit in middle school. I played all sorts of sports. I've always been interested in football. I never played it, but I was always interested in it. So I've always been interested in sports. I've always been in the sports world. My entire family has, really.
Yeah, but
So,
bodybuilding came as you're coming back to the faith.
yeah. So after high school, I was like, all right, I'm done playing basketball. I need to still exercise, though, because I just wanted to exercise. And so I decided to start lifting weights in my school, and I realized I was really good at it, and I liked it a lot. So, yeah.
And prior to that, you didn't have any strength training experience.
Not any more than like doing push-ups in my room for basketball or something like that.
Got
My
it.
coach would tell me to do it. Yeah.
And so around what time do you start strength training?
When I was 19.
19.
I
Oh, okay.
believe.
So fairly later. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then are you also, so it sounds like what happened in your situation is that there's a great outlet that I think is underutilized with strength training and young men, in the sense of this, right? Your body is changing physiologically. Testosterone is just bursting through your veins. And if you don't, I think sports is an outlet, right? Like basketball is an outlet.
Yeah.
But to me, channeling that testosterone towards bodybuilding-esque training is one of the best ways to mitigate what Paul describes in 1 Corinthians 7, right? Burning with passion. Like if you're burning with passion, get married,
Yeah.
right? But if you haven't met someone or you're not in a season of life to get married, I think that channeling that energy, that testosterone, that thing that all young boys have, young men have, towards fitness training gives men an outlet to not just sit and burn with passion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
would you say that kind of helped mitigate some of that for you as well, having an outlet to release your aggression and your testosterone?
Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. A huge part of it is
And he called his 10 servants and delivered to them 10 pounds and said unto them, Occupy till I come. The Occupy Till I Come collection is here at the Blessed God Shop, a collaboration we did with our friend Josh Nadeau from Sword and Pencil. This piece of art is made up of beautiful iconography, telling the story of sowing and reaping, dying to sin, and evangelizing the lost. In this collection, you will find these designs highlighted, such as this Death to Sin t-shirt, which highlights the bold design of hammering a nail through Satan's skull. And on the back, a large print that says discipline is freedom. Now you can find all the regular stuff like high quality printed shirts and Champs printed hoodies, but this time around we also decided to do some women's cut t-shirts as well. And for the first time ever, you can also pick up a beautiful canvas print of the Occupy Till I Come design or the Discipline is Freedom piece. And we also, for the first time ever, got an amazing 500-piece puzzle, which I personally enjoyed getting to sit down, do with my own family, and it sparked some really interesting conversations. And when you put on one of the pieces from this collection, it's a constant reminder that we are here to not just sit back and be apathetic, but to be the hands and feet of Jesus, to help usher in God's kingdom on this side of eternity and to care for the least of these. But this entire collection is only available until September 8th at midnight. So go to blessgod.shop and get yours now.
the fact that you have all this testosterone, especially when you're a young man. This book is meant for anyone, but of course, I realized, pretty early on that young men are probably gonna be the ones who resonate with it the most, right?
Yeah.
So you have all this testosterone, so you channel that towards weightlifting. But in my book, I go a step further, not just say, okay, don't just weightlift for yourself, but you're weightlifting for God. You mentioned before, your body's a temple. God created all of creation for man to steward. And it's sort of like, well, why don't we take care of God's greatest creation being ourselves, right? So how much more onus do we have to take care of ourselves? And that's the idea I get at in my book. I talk about how incredible your body is actually made. I talk about how there's like 100 trillion synapses in your brain. To give you some perspective, that's 1,000 times more than the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. So it's pretty, your body's
crazy.
pretty incredible.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. And why wouldn't you want to care about this wonderful thing that God gave you? And it's a gift. You're expressing gratitude when you are taking care of it. And yeah, that's just a lot of the ideas I was trying to get across in the book, and how important it is to take care of, not just for yourself, not just for your own testosterone, to an outlet for your testosterone, but an outlet to glorify God with.
Yeah. Can you go deeper on a little bit of the overlap you see between physical fitness and faith? Outside of what we already discussed, what other principles would you encourage people to consider regarding why not just going on walks and being outside, but like actually sculpting your body, and there's value in that?
Yeah. So there perhaps there's two reasons I can think off the top of my head. One of them is that it gives you more influence. It gives you more power, like not just like physical power, of course, but like physical power and social power tend to be somewhat correlated. When you start to get more muscular, I think everyone has this sort of experience where they start getting more muscular. People start treating them a bit differently. And I've noticed that in my own life, right?
Yeah.
So I'll talk about Christianity and they'll be like, oh, like this guy, he's such a Christian, he's submitting to God, like he's so strong, like why is he submitting to something else? And it just shows to highlight how much greater our God is compared to myself. And it also teaches you things like discipline, like sacrifice. I think it's even somewhat of a representation of our own walk with God, actually. I make an argument in my book for, because a lot of the times when people think about transformation from like a non-Christian to a Christian, sometimes you get the stories of like Road to Damascus where you are suddenly like a really vehement atheist and then some sort of experience changes you and become a very staunch Christian. But in my own life, what I found is that a lot of it is very small, like imperceptibly small changes that happen over time that eventually equal some sort of great change that when you look back at yourself, you're like, wow, I can't even recognize myself from before. That happens.
And that's how strength training is. It's this day in out consistency of showing up.
Exactly what it
and
is,
you don't necessarily see day-to-day progress.
Yeah.
You might see week-to-week progress.
And when you just start, maybe you might see week to week. But
Yeah. And when you're a newbie, you could actually really add on a lot of muscle early on. So if you're 18, 19, 20 years old, testosterone's at peak levels, and you just get the right amount of calories in, you just eat enough food, you can put on, what would you say, about 20 pounds of muscle in a year or so?
Yeah, maybe like if you're eating right, you can probably put up around 15, 20 pounds of muscle in the first year of training, yeah.
And that makes someone look like a superhero. And if you're 140, 150 teenager at a weight, I don't know, you guys do kilos in Canada. We do it correctly here in America. With pounds. You go from 140, 150 to being 170 with 20 pounds of muscle or 15 pounds of muscle. You look like a whole nother human.
Yeah. That was the first thing. So I went to college in Toronto, University of Toronto. And when I came back for the summer and then I just wore a t-shirt, all my brothers were like, Paul, what the heck? What happened to you? Like a completely different person now because I gained like 15 pounds of muscle in the 9 months I was training. And yeah, they even start to treat me a bit differently, I noticed. So there's definitely some sort of power that you have in there. And there is a transformation that reflects your walk with God. I mean, I've talked to some high school students, some high school classmates I had. When I released my book, I just posted on Instagram. And a bunch of my high school friends were like, oh, you wrote a book, what the heck? And then they came over to my house and then we started talking and started to reconnect. And they were like, yo, you're like a completely different person. You are much more calm. You're much more subtle. You're much more patient. And it was just sort of small changes that over time that led up to that. And I sort of made a correlation to that with my bodybuilding career. And that's one of the main things I noticed. Yeah.
Well, I think there's something to doing things consistently that are hard that then compound over time, right? So it's like if you're consistently showing up, reading your Bible when no one's looking, praying, going to church, being a community, over time, those things compound and then you get results and you are a different person. Your temperament starts to change, right?
Yeah.
And so the parallel of fitness in that sense, I think is huge because you're making small deposits, relatively speaking, 30 to 45 minutes of strength training 3 to 5 times a week. That's not a huge commitment, but those incremental deposits then compound over time and someone becomes a different person, different temperament, better virtue, better values, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is often the frustrating part to me is how few Christians really see the parallels and how few Christians see the parallels as, and I don't want to say it's a magic bullet, but a lot of times it is towards lust and struggling with, pornography or whatever, right? Like meaning this, one, it gives you a practical positive outlet for that. 2, it gives you something productive to do with your time. 3, there's a parallel to walking with Jesus and the consistency in that. But I think it also allows you to see how much things can change when you make those incremental deposits. And I don't think people really imagine that, meaning that if you could change your physical body, what else can you change about your life? If you could change your chisel yourself into someone different, why can't you build a business? Why can't you start a career? Why can't you develop a new skill set? Why can't you be of a greater value and asset to your community? Right? All those things interconnect. And so when I keep going back to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, right? Those of you guys who are burning with passion, just get married. Well, a lot of people can't get married. Why can't they get married? Because 1, they're not mature enough and developed enough, or 2, financially, they can't afford to get married. So if you're physically chiseling your body, that gives you transferable grit, adversity, overcome adversity to channel into building a better career for yourself.
Yeah, it also makes you more confident, right? You actually see tangible progress when you sculpt a body. When you, let's say you read a book, right? Your head doesn't like literally get bigger. That'd be pretty cool if it did. But like as you get more intelligent, your head doesn't get bigger. When you get more, when you get more witty, nothing physically happens to you. But when you chisel your body, you see tangible progress, and that increases your confidence. It makes you think that you can take on the entire world pretty much. And then it's sort of like, how much greater can that transformation be with the Almighty God by your side, directly steering every move that you make. And that's sort of the idea I get at in the book. And yeah, in regards to that passion, a lot of it also I talk about with sports in my book. So not just bodybuilding, but it's like muscular Christianity doesn't encompass just bodybuilding. It's boxing, basketball, football, all of that. I have a very wide array of disparate metaphors that I use. And that sort of energy that you get from, that you have to have when you train those things, is sort of the energy that I want people to think of in regards to their faith as well. So when you think of, like, you're familiar with basketball, so like the killer instinct of Michael Jordan, the Mamba mentality, that sort of stuff is honestly what I see in people like Paul and Jesus. They have a sort of indefatigable piety where they, there's the verse, to die is gain, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Yeah. And what he's actually saying there is like, hey, if I'm out on the street, I'll still proclaim God. I'll still evangelize people. I'll still bless God. When I'm in jail, I'll still bless God. I don't really care. If I die, okay, whatever. I get to be with God. So that's sort of like every single moment of their life is geared towards coming closer to God, to giving glory to God. And when you look at athletes like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Tom Brady, a lot of them, they speak the same way about their sport. Every single moment of their life is trying to improve themselves at their sport. It's trying to hone their skills. And I think that the Christian walk is similar in that sense. We're trying to reach this ideal that we can never fully reach, but the pursuit of reaching there is infinitely blessing, infinitely grateful and blessing. And that's a lot of the idea I try and get at in my book.
Yeah, that's dope. And we'll get at some of the kind of controversies around muscular Christianity and even some of your own, current issues that you've had post having a pretty traumatic event happen in your life that have kind of derailed you. In terms of you mentioned some scriptures. What other scriptures come to mind and Bible passages come to mind with regards to why people, and specifically Christians, should take their physical fitness more seriously?
So there's another verse that comes to mind off the top of my head. It is, when I've finished the race, I think it's Philippians or something like that, where he talks about finishing the race and running for Christ. And he wants to train his body that way he's not too tired at the end of it. And if you take that literally, then how long can you serve God when you have a spoiled spine or a non-functional knee, right?
Yep.
So in quite a literal sense, you actually need a body to serve God. So that's another verse that comes to mind.
I think of 1 Corinthians 6 talks about your body is the temple of God. Now that's in context of sexual immorality, but I think it definitely transfers over. If our body is the temple of God,
you want to keep that clean.
You got to keep that good. Tell me, what do you make of the context that they were living under? They were more outdoors. They were walking more. And it's almost like we need alternatives, not alternatives, but like we need things like gamifying sports, things like strength training, because our world is so different than it was even 200-300 years ago. right? Like the world they were living in antiquity, they were just physically more active, which interestingly enough eliminated a lot of the disease we're dealing with today.
Yeah.
So I think there's a context that we're missing because we always want to look at everything through like our Western lens, and it's like, well, Paul didn't go to the gym and strength training. It's like, yeah, but Paul probably walked 5 miles a day. You know what I mean? Like Paul probably actually was outside building using his hands. In our context, most people aren't. They're working indoors. They're working, in air conditioning stuff. Praise God for air conditioning, right? We got air conditioning running today. So it's like, in my paradigm, I have to go way out of my way to be physically active and intentional, because if I don't, then I will very easily just get fat,
Yeah. So that's probably the main critique I get from my book, that and having like glorifying the body over glorifying God, which I make pretty clear you shouldn't be doing in the book. But yeah, I have a whole chapter in the book in there, chapter 3, I believe, where I talk about how we have all these, we basically sit down all day and we don't actually like need to exercise anymore. So, the Bible doesn't really talk about exercising that much. And I think I posit that probably one of the reasons for that. I mean, it does, but I posit that one of the reasons it doesn't talk about it as much as you ought to, as much as I like probably, maybe you don't think it needs an entire book just to talk about exercise, but a lot of the people, they're running like 5,000 miles a month or whatever, right? And yeah, so you need some kind of substitute for that in modern day. And I think that it goes in line with God's design for your body, right? Your body is meant to move. So the fact that our lives don't necessitate us moving just means that we have to create some kind of substitute for it.
Yeah. Did you say 5,000? They would move 5,000?
I think I was just throwing out a number.
Okay. You being hyperbolic. Okay, cool. Because I was like, that's crazy. Yeah, and our food is different.
And our food is
right?
different,
They ate very simple foods back then.
Yeah.
Even again here, a couple hundred years ago, we ate very simple foods, and today we're eating very processed foods with all kinds of caloric dense, low volume things a part of the typical American diet. I don't know how much different it is in Canada, but goodness gracious, you eat a typical American diet, and you're going to be way over the allotted amount of calories.
I think Canada has a slightly lower obesity rate than America, so I'd imagine the food might be a bit different, or maybe we just care more about our health. I don't know, but yeah, I've been here for I don't know like a day or two, and the food's been pretty much the same, so I haven't noticed anything different.
Yeah. So I think the reality that they were more physically active in the scriptures just because of how their life went. The work was different back then, right? Farming and those sorts of things. And then the reality of what they ate, how much they ate, and the types of food they ate was just different than our current context. So I think that's a good argument for why we have to go out of the way to be intentional about what we're consuming, in terms of both food and activity. People who are watching this that are like, hey man, that's all good, but like, bro, I'm struggling right now. I've never strength trained before. What advice would you have for them to kind of get started? And then we're going to go into a bit of your journey and recently something crazy that happened to you.
So what I would say is that, like, for what I did at first, actually, I just had a bunch of like some weights in my room, and I didn't know what to do with them, so I just started curling them.
Okay. So you started with the vanity metric.
So yeah,
vanity muscles.
Yeah. So just do basic exercises. If you don't want to go to the gym, you're too embarrassed, you're too scared to go in there with a bunch of people. A lot of people there will be lifting for years, and maybe you'll be intimidated by how big they are or something like that. You can do it in your room. Just do push-ups. If you have a pull-up bar, buy a pull-up bar. They're like $20. You can do that. My favorite gym equipment actually is the gymnastics rings. Okay. It makes everything very unstable. So it works on it will make you much stronger than if you were to just do it by yourself. Okay. Just on the ground. So just do that for a couple weeks, couple months, just so you get used to training. And then I'd suggest you go to the gym, but if you really don't want to, then you could just do those exercises for a bit, and maybe do some lunges or get some heavier dumbbells, do lunges or something like that. That'll be my advice. You got to start somewhere. I guess I can't really give you a workout program right here on the podcast. I guess there's a workout program in my book actually. So the last pages of my book, there's a free workout program.
There's a whole section on just working out.
Yeah, there's a whole section on giving you workout tips for how many sets you should do, how long you should rest.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, this is
and at the very end, there's a whole workout program. I even give you a graphic.
6-day split. I like it.
It's a 6-day split and a 3-day split. So depending on how much time you have, yeah.
And this is all. It looks like your workout plan is based on the basics of the compound lifts, the big compound lifts. So
Yeah.
you got bench press, overhead press, incline, dumbbell press, tricep push down, right? And that's on your, looks like a push day. And you go to a pull day, which is pull-ups, barbell, bicep. And by the way, if you can't do pull-ups, I started with banded pull-ups, and those were great to get me to doing regular pull-ups.
Yeah, for sure.
The average man can't do a pull-up. I don't know if you know that.
I didn't know that until I started working out.
Yeah, yeah. The average dude can't do a pull-up. So if you're doing, if you're trying to get good at pull-ups, they're great. You can go to a barbell, bicep curl, front, left curl. Yeah. So these are very and then you got leg day squats, leg press. Yeah, I think I love what you said. Like most people, if they mastered a pushing movement, a push up, a bench press, a overhead press, and they mastered some sort of pulling vertical, like a pull up or an Australian pull up, a deadlift and a squat, and just did different variations of those, and started with like the hardest version of it, and then did different variations. You can get a lot of bang for your buck with just mastering those 4 compound lifts.
Yeah, because those are the lifts that everything's kind of based off of.
Right.
So pull-ups, bench press, squat, deadlift. If you know how to do those things, that'll work out probably every muscle in your body.
Yep.
And you'll learn how to. One thing I've noticed when I started training people, at least like some family members and friends in person, is that they don't know how to actually like use their muscles. Like they don't. Like I tell them to like, hey, retract your shoulder, and they're like, what are you talking about? Engage your back. What do you mean engage my back? So if you just do those exercises, you'll learn how to engage those muscles better, which will help you not only lift more, but it would also help you to gain more muscle as you do those exercises, because now you're actually engaging the proper muscles properly.
Yeah, and I think the more practical stuff people can get, there's so much stuff they can look up online in terms of those movements. I mean, when I really got back into fitness, I was just on Athlete X's channel all the time, and Jeff Cavalier watching his stuff and trying to figure out splits. And then I was like, oh, like this is actually way simpler when you understand the compound lifts.
Yeah.
And you just go in on all those and then just make variations of those essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can find you got one in your book, but there's all types of splits. Let's talk about your situation, because you write this book, you put it out, then in the process of putting it out, you get into a really gnarly car accident that actually has prevented you from being as active as you'd like to be. I'm gonna throw a picture up here for folks.
Ironically, as I was writing the book, I was in the gym, like, thinking about these new insights, but then like 75-80% of the way through, I get injured and I'm just not able to work out.
Yeah.
And even since then, I've like worked out sometimes, done some things here and there, but.
And you got to this car. I got your if you can see it.
Yeah.
So what happened? It looks like there's some snow in the background. Canada gets a lot of snow.
Yeah.
And it looks like you got into a really crazy car accident.
Yeah. So what was happening was my dad called me. He's like, hey, can you pick me up from the airport? I forget where he was going, but we can pick up from the airport. So I was like, okay. And then I left, but then I was kind of late. So I started driving a bit fast, and it was sort of in the night also. And then there was I guess I underestimated how much snow and how wet it was, because the snow was kind of melting. I was like, oh, the roads are generally clear, right? So then I started just driving. I was going about 110 kilometers an hour, which is like, I think,
not miles, guys, kilometers.
Yeah, kilometers. I guess like 70 miles or something like that. So I was just driving and chilling. And then I tried to turn somewhere, and I started trying to slow my car down, but I think there was some water in my tires. I got hydroplaned, which means that it's water in your tires. And then I just lost control. I felt like I was playing like Mario Kart or something like that. I was like, whoa, what the heck? I can't even control my car. And then I was on the outside lane. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna like hit this car if I keep going. So I got swerved over. And then there was a giant sign right in front of me that was like, hey, 50 more kilometers till you get to this other place, whatever that is in miles. And I was just I swerved, and then I was like, oh no, come on, I gotta like dodge this thing, but I couldn't. And I just hit the front of the car. It actually hit the driver's side of the car, so I felt the most of the impact came on my side. And airbags flew up, and I was just there. I think I was knocked out for like maybe like 30 seconds or something like that, because I don't remember really crashing. I just remember like opening my eyes and being in complete shock, and I was looking for my phone. I couldn't find it because it was dark, and I was just there, just like wailing in pain. And then someone came in. I think they turned in, and they were like, hey, I called 911. And I was like, can you open the door for me? And then they didn't do it because 911 told them not to do it. And
So that door was that ripped off?
yeah, they had
in
like
the
some kind of
accident?
chainsaw or something.
They had
like
to
that.
take that door off.
Yeah, they had to
Jeez.
rip it off because the door actually got jammed. They couldn't open it.
Oh my gosh!
And-
And so, what injuries did you end up sustaining from this?
So I got a tendinosis in my supraspinatus, which is a muscle in the shoulder. I still have that. It's gotten better, but I still have that. In my hip, I think it's my iliopsoas. I forget what the specific injury was, but I remember my iliopsoas got messed up, and my ankle is also messed up. I forget what injury is there. I've been mostly paying attention to my shoulder because you can't really do anything without your shoulder. You sort of realize how little you can actually do without your shoulder. Like I can do maybe some leg exercises, and that's more or less kind of it for what I can do.
And how long ago was this accident?
This was in March 2023.
Wow! So this
So-
has been over a year.
It's been over a year.
And
yeah.
and now how can you exercise at all? Are you exercising? What? Does
Yeah,
that look like?
I can do like bicep curl, tricep extension because it doesn't aggravate my shoulder too much. And I can do lunges because my hip can handle that. If I do squats, then my hip kind of gets all messed up. But I can do lunges. I can do like leg extensions, I guess. And that's sort of the gist of it. I can do bench press up till maybe it's just for statistics, right? I can do like 2 plates bench press still, but before I could do like 375 pounds of the
Jeez.
bench press. So it's much less than I could do before, but like I can still do that. I can still work my chest a little bit. And if you were to see me when it first happened, though, I couldn't walk. So I couldn't walk for the first like 2 or some weeks when it happened. And going up the stairs for the first like 2 months was extremely difficult because my ankle would just be like in serious pain. So I had to walk on my toes for a while. And if you saw where I came from, then you'd be like, you made a lot of progress. But yeah, I'm still looking to finish that. This last like 10% of healing has been taking a very long time. And yeah.
Man, I mean, that's you're still able to do 2 plates on the bench. That's rather impressive, bro. This man's hitting 225, and that's light. It sounds like there's a genetic gifting that you have to be able to lift for a couple years and be able to hit those sorts of weights.
Yeah, I think that even before I started lifting, actually, I realized I was stronger than the average person.
Yeah.
When I played basketball, there's like some pictures of me playing basketball, and I just had like these giant shoulders and arms relative to everyone else in the court. I was like, wow, I have some gift for like maybe I just like did push-ups better than everyone else.
Yeah.
That's what I thought at first, but then I started like lifting weights.
Yeah.
And I saw other people lift weights, and I'm like, I'm getting more muscle than you are, and we're doing the exact same things. I have some kind of genetic
Yeah.
predisposition to
When you were
this.
playing ball, were you dunking?
I could dunk off an alley-oop.
Okay.
So like I'm 5'8", so like okay,
That's
well, like
that's fantastic.
I measured my vertical when I was in school. It was 37 inches at its peak. So
Yeah, there you go. So, considering you have a clear genetic advantage, and then you have this accident, it sounds like maybe I don't want to speak this with confidence, but maybe God allowed you to experience some of these challenges right after, or right in the process of writing this book, that like a lot of people who are like, hey man, that's great for you, bro. Like you're shredded, like you're hitting 225 hurt, like, but now you're like, you've gone through adversity, like real adversity that you could have allowed to derail your own fitness journey. And maybe you feel like maybe God allowed that to happen to allow you to be more relatable to people that are going through real challenges and are like, bro, it's not as easy as you think. Like, here's my life and it sucks. And you're telling me to go to the gym. Like, cool story, bro. Do you think that this situation having had happened to you, it could be to make you more relatable to people?
yeah, so as you were saying that question, actually, I was thinking, okay, so maybe my journey was, okay, I get muscular, I get all this power, get all this influence, because I was talking before about how when you have physical capabilities, you have sort of social influence, and people were taking my opinions more seriously. I was saying, hey, save yourself for marriage, and they're like, well, like you look like you can. This is what they say, anyways. They look like you can, have premarital sex if you wanted to, and I just refrained from that. So they sort of take my word more seriously. And then I get this accident, and now I'm like sort of at baseline. So I'm sort of like gone from like the peak of, not the peak, but like I get a very high level of power to like a very low level of power. And I sort of get to relate to everyone.
But just for the record, low level of power is still relative
Okay, well,
for
yeah.
you. But go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah. So yeah, perhaps it was something like that. I have contemplated quite a bit, like, why did God allow this to happen to me? Like, what have I done? I think everyone sort of, when something traumatic like that happens to them, they sort of feel that way. And yeah, maybe that's part of it. It's still something I'm contemplating right now. Still something I'm sort of thinking of. You know, how does this affect my life? Like, why did God allow this to happen? What lesson am I supposed to take from this? That's the question I've been thinking of ever since it really happened, actually. So, yeah, I'm not fully processed it, but maybe that's one perspective you could have.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think when someone is genetically gifted and then they're a fitness influencer, though on the surface level, it gives them more credibility because, well, clearly, like, you're shredded, right? You're jacked. But on a very interpersonal relatability level, once you get beneath that initial onion of like, oh, this dude's jacked, he looks great with his shirt off, but you go a level deeper and then you find out, well, wait a minute, this person has had setbacks, right? Versus someone that may not be as genetically gifted that then has a crazy physical transformation, you know? And so I think the challenges and adversity like this, in my opinion, probably in the grand scheme of the narrative of your story, will make you more relatable and connect more to the average person than just like, oh yeah, dude, like I started lifting weights and 6 weeks later I was jacked. And it's like, well, okay, bud, you know, like, and now I'm a bodybuilder and you should be fit too. But when you're like, hey, I had this massive setback and I couldn't really do much stuff. And it really, you know, I think in the grand narrative, I think that's going to make you feel the needs of like the average person walking around, that they did the 6 months of lifting and they couldn't have access to proper nutrition, or they couldn't have they just couldn't get the movements properly, or they did the movements properly and they had access to proper nutrition, but they gained 5 pounds instead of 25 pounds of newbie gains, you know?
Yeah.
So I think these are the things that, in my opinion, just looking from the outside in, will make you more relatable and make people connect with you more.
Yeah. So another thing that I've noticed as I got injured actually is that it's not just the physicality of muscular Christianity that is something that I resonate with. Cause I was rereading chunks of my book before I came here. Just the overall mindset of it. I talked before about how you gotta have the Mambo mentality for faith. I've sort of embodied that, sort of learned to embody that more. I've been paying more attention to other aspects of my spiritual life, not just my physicality, but just everything about my spiritual life, how am I portraying God in the way that I act, the way that I speak. That's been something I've been focusing on a lot. And again, just like the idea that life is just this giant journey towards God and towards reaching your ideal. You know, physicality is one ideal that you can have, and it's a very physical manifestation of that ideal, but there's all sorts of ideals that you can reach, right? And I've been focusing on just trying to focus and reach those ideals. And my muscular Christianity mindset that I had when I made the book is still applicable, right? I'm still thinking like competition is one of the parts I talk about in my book as well. So I'm thinking like, you know, I'm going to like, sometimes when I'm like wrestling with something, I'm like, I need to just destroy this thing. I need to like completely annihilate this from my life. I need to drop 50 points on the devil pretty much, you know? Like that's sort of my mindset with it. I'm gonna destroy this thing. I'm gonna burn it to ashes, and upon its ashes, I'm gonna erect a 10,000-foot statue of Jesus. Right? That's sort of my mindset and my muscular Christianity. When I was writing this book, I sort of developed that mindset. I sort of harnessed that testosterone that I had into transferring not just to weightlifting but to writing, and I realized that sort of mindset is applicable not just to weightlifting, not just to sports, but like in all areas of life.
That's good
for all people who want to, or into self-improvement, who are into any kind of human development whatsoever, to reach that ideal, to strive for that ideal, and to push towards that with God, with the Almighty God by your side, lighting up, shepherding your every move, and empowering you, is something that I've really started to embody a lot more in other areas of my life. So maybe that's another reason that I was supposed to go through this accident.
Yeah. Let's look at some of the potential criticisms of the muscular Christianity, right? People would say, well, hey man, like, you're supposed to be meek, you're supposed to be humble, you know, Jesus was meek and humble. There's a passage that says like he wasn't much to look at. I'm paraphrasing, right? And so how would you respond to some of those ideas of like, be meek, be humble, don't be powerful, don't be strong, because look at Jesus.
Yeah, so there's actually a large portion of my book on that. Actually, it's about how you know how we view power, how we view humility, how we view charity. Yeah, so fitness actually can make you it works on your temperance, right? When you like basketball, for example, requires a kind of finesse where you can't just like throw the ball as hard as you can at the rim and then hope it goes in. You know, you got to like have a soft touch, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it'll teach you to not just have power, but to harness that in the correct way. So from a quite literal standpoint, that's part of it. And then the verses about Jesus, about like being weak, a lot of them actually, if you look at the entire context, it's sort of like I forget this verse. It's in Corinthians, but it's like I forget what it was, but it's a lot of it is about being weak and being meek and being small. That way, God can shine a lot more. That's so good. In a sense, it's sort of like all the verses ostensibly telling you to be weak are counterbalanced by telling you like by highlighting how much stronger you are with God.
Yes.
So that's another thing I would say. And then also about like, you know, being humble and being and another criticism I get is like, okay, this is sort of goes against the principles of charity, right? Because you're just oppressing someone. You have to actively beat them down, as opposed to the Bible where it talks about bringing people up.
Wait. I'm not tracking that criticism. How is you developing, or is that you talking about the sports aspect?
The sports aspects of it.
Because if you're becoming successful at sports, you're defeating someone.
Yeah.
And that's not charitable?
I think that it's sort of rooted in their idea of charity that you're bringing people up. That's why I mentioned charity.
Okay.
So yeah, a lot of I've heard that quite a bit where you're putting someone down in order to bring yourself up. Well, first of all, this is like a game at sports. It's not exactly the same thing as like, you know, like social inequalities or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's much different. And second of all, you know, you actually do, in some sense, if you have some kind of spiritual inclination towards good, you actually can bring people up through sports, right? Because when competition brings both people to a higher level of competence than they otherwise would have been, you can you can work by yourself, you can train by yourself, you can work on your shots by yourself and everything. But if you don't go up against other people, then you're just not going to be as good.
That's really good. You said competition brings both people up to a higher level of competence.
Yeah.
And what's the benefit of that?
So if the goal is self-improvement, it is to push your limits and see how far you can get and become better, then you need competition to actually reach your maximum potential in that sense. You know, there's even in your spiritual life, and some degree of competition and some degree of like, hey, I want to do this because me and my friend are having this competition to see you could do that. That could probably be good. So that's another thing I would say. What was another criticism you mentioned?
The criticism about vanity is going to come up, right?
Yeah,
like if you're like, hey man, you should get shredded, it gets up 20% body fat, it's up 15% body fat, and someone's like, well, why? Because you just want to look good and you want to be vain. That's going to come up.
That's definitely a critique. So what I would say to that is that, I mean, I will acknowledge the fact that yes, it obviously can become a vain pursuit if you are doing it like just to look good and using your looks as a means to just like flaunt over other people. That's definitely a vain, something vain. But you know, the people have been admiring the human figure for decades. If you look at the Greeks, they have a whole word for it actually, about moral perfection and physical beauty. So these things can actually go together. They thought it went together. The Greeks thought it went together. The word is called kalokagathia. I mentioned in my book a few times. It is moral perfection and moral beauty and physical beauty in symbiosis. So these two aren't exactly, they aren't mutually exclusive, right?
That's good.
And they can actually work together. And if you have the right mindset when you're going into it, it can actually be enlivening. It can be enlivening for yourself in your physical and spiritual life, because the physical and spiritual are connected.
Yeah, they're connected, and I think that they should be redeemed and acknowledged more that they're connected, because what's happened, I think, in society is that some of these ideas have been forfeited, specifically the idea of beauty, goodness, right, excellence. So then the world takes them, corrupts them, manipulates them, and uses them to hurt people, right?
Yeah.
So if you're talking about the beauty of the human body, I mean, we don't got to look any further than what we're seeing with adult content, how pervasive it is. That's literally taking something that's good and beautiful, and it's being perverted and distorted to hurt people and to damage people, right? And so it's like if Christians aren't accurately assessing beauty, goodness, virtue, and connecting it as an overflow of the spiritual, then the world's going to hijack it and continue distorting it to hurt people and harm people.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about this criticism? Muscular Christianity can create a overemphasis on the physical and at the expense of spiritual depth. So people who are really into physical fitness don't necessarily go deeper with, their spiritual depth, and then that can create a distorted view of Christianity where, physical strength and success are mistaken as spiritual maturity, as spiritual indicators. Because there's a lot of people that aren't physically fit, but they could still be spiritually mature.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a part of that is that's a warranted criticism, right? You could be caring more about the physicality than the spirituality.
Yeah.
Whereas, I think the body and the soul and the mind are connected, right? Mm-hmm. If you're physically well, they're going to be mentally well. If you're like fasting, for example, actually increases your testosterone. There's actually some studies about that, which is pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you're spiritually well, then your mental health can be better. So there's some correlation between them. But of course, they aren't exactly the same. I acknowledge that in my book. The first 3 paragraphs, something like that I mentioned in my book, like they aren't exactly the same, but they're correlated. And if you had to choose one, you should definitely choose the spirit over it every single time, every day of the week. Mm-hmm. Just like how all the Christian martyrs did. They decided, hey, we're gonna get rid of my body, but you can't take over my soul, right? There's even a Bible verse even about that, actually. Mm-hmm. Fear the person who can destroy the soul, but not the I'm butchering it. Fear the person who if someone shouldn't be able to destroy your soul, but they can destroy your body. Mm-hmm. Jesus says something like that.
Yeah, fear the one that can do both.
Yeah.
Yeah, in hell. Yeah.
So there is definitely a worry about that. There is definitely something that there's definitely a risk in that. Mm-hmm. But if you do it, my point is that you should be doing it with the right mindset. You should be doing it with a soul that is ordered towards the right things. And if it's not ordered towards the right things, then just like anything else, it can become corrupted. Money can become corrupted. I guess the Bible also talks about money a lot and how it can corrupt people. Mm-hmm. Sexual beauty can become corrupted with pornography. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All sorts of great things can become corrupted. I think there's some smart person out there that says something like, the greater something is, the worse it is when it's corrupted.
That's good.
So the greater your body is, the greater your strength is, the worse it is when it's corrupted. So you just have to very much keep a spiritual life intact. You got to keep your spiritual you got to make sure your spirit is very much inclined towards that goodness, towards mm-hmm. that towards the goodness. And if it is, then I think that physical fitness can be a way to amplify your ability to promote the gospel. Like I was saying before, when you have physical strength, you have some kind of spiritual strength, mm-hmm. you have some kind of social power, mm-hmm. and you can bring more people to the Christ. And that's one of the main parts I talk about in my book, actually. So I think that if you do it with the right intentions, then it can be good. But because, I guess technically with my quote, right, because it's so good, it can be so easily corrupted. Mm-hmm. And that's something you got to be very much worried about.
Yeah.
But it's just something like, okay, there's going to be, like, power exists, right? Power is going to exist. It's this amorphous substance that's going to exist. Mm-hmm. So we have to choose whether we want people who are inclined towards the good to have it, or we want people that are bad to have it. And
yeah, well, again, it goes back to Christians fleeting the institutions, fleeting the aspects of the natural world, because they're afraid of power, they're afraid of beauty, or they're afraid of art, they're afraid of music. It's a pretty consistent, pattern that we've seen, unfortunately, probably more so within the last 100 years of Christians, like being afraid of these things instead of seeing these things as they exist and they should be used by Christians to do good.
Yeah. And another part of it is, I think that's what I was going to say.
It's all good. Here's another critique. Muscular Christianity can create an elitist undertone, right? Meaning that when there's the potential for the powerful, for those who have access, for those who have resources to accumulate said resources, it it can alienate those of a lower socioeconomic class. So I'll give you a very practical example. I have a gym in my backyard. I'll show it to you. It's I think it's pretty fire. You tell me what you think about it. So I got everything I need here. Like I don't have to go to a gym. I don't have to do anything but walk a few steps. And some days, I'll do my morning walk. I'll do my 45 to 60 minutes of cardio. I'll do my 30 to 60 minutes of strength training. Like these are my normal days, but I'm in an extremely fortunate position to be able to afford to have a gym on my property. I'm in an extremely fortunate position to be able to have the flexibility to do these things because I don't have to be at a regular 9 to 5, right? And so my biggest challenge is when I strength train, I want to eat more food, and it's hard for me to be in a deficit to get under 20% body fat. And like that's my challenge is it's like really, really, really first world problems. And so if we're talking about like Christianity always historically being an advocate for the poor, for the marginalized, to help be the hands and feet of Jesus for the least of these, how do you think muscular Christianity fits into that equation, right? Like in potentially creating elitist undertones where we can kind of look down upon people who don't have the same flexibility in their schedule, the same access to gym and nutritious food.
Yeah. So there definitely is a sort of like muscular Christianity is a very first world idea, right? Like why would someone living in, I don't know, someone who's very poor, low class, can't afford a gym, can't afford any of this stuff. They're just trying to eat food. Mm-hmm. Why would they care about your my developing muscles and playing sports, right? So this is very much a first world kind of Christianity. I recognize that.
Yeah.
Does it create a sort of people that are sort of looking down on the poor? I mean, perhaps it could. That's certainly, it's not a critique I've heard too much, but it is something that could happen. Like with money, with power in general, mm-hmm. You sort of lose your perspective. You're sort of prone to losing your perspective. Mm-hmm. So what I actually like to do I recommend this in my book actually, is that I like to fast mm-hmm. for religious reasons. Mm. And when you fast, you sort of start to take on a sort of a lower class sort of mindset. You start to think of, wow, food is amazing. Mm. God has created these wonderful, nutritious meals for us to eat. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. And it sort of it very much humbles you in that sense. And, it even goes back to your fitness, right? Because I talked before about how fasting can actually improve your testosterone. So in a sense, it actually even could help you in the long run. So I think fasting is one of the ways that you can stay humble in your pursuit to muscular Christianity. It can, you're willingly telling yourself that there are other things more important than your immediate physical development. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that sort of puts you in the perspective of those who are poor. I mean, Jesus said that he had though having all the power in the world, he chose to live like one of us, right? Mm-hmm. So in fasting, we are in a somewhat of a sense doing the same thing, where we are going without something that we need, something that is good, in order to reestablish our commitment to God and to humble ourselves before God and before other people.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. What's the longest you fasted before?
Longest I fasted, I think I've gone 3 days without food.
Just water, or are you doing
just water? Yeah,
just water.
Yeah,
pretty hard.
Yeah, it's pretty. I found it really hard. Like the first day, I was like, man, I really hate this. Yeah. But like the second day wasn't that hard. And okay, I did this during Easter, right? So it was like Good Friday, I didn't eat. Saturday, I didn't eat, and then Sunday morning, I ate. So I guess it's like 2.5 days if you really want to be technical about it.
Sure.
But first day was extremely difficult. Second day, for some reason, just wasn't as hard. I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. Yeah. And then third day, for some reason, I was just really hungry again, and then I ate. So I don't know, maybe it's different for different people, but yeah. it's very much something that I just got more used to as it went on.
Yeah, I love that. I love fasting as an antidote for sliding into elitism and pride. I think that's really, really helpful, and I think a practical takeaway. I discovered your stuff through Shreds, the fitness YouTuber, the whole, meme with him is he kind of looks like a Greek god, and he's a Christian, and he really resonated with the book, and that's kind of how I got hip to it. What was your impression of that? And what was that like to get a shout out from a pretty big creator that's kind of, for all intents and purposes, kind of an icon in the space, just purely on the way his aesthetics are?
It was pretty surreal. Like I've been making YouTube videos. I've been like in this media business for like a really long time, like 10 years. And I just sort of like, things just happen and come and go. So when that happened, and then I like, whoa, like this guy like actually like noticed me, and he really liked the book. It was definitely just like a surreal moment. Like I felt like it was like, and it was like a 40-minute video too. I was like, wow, he really liked this book. Like it was really surreal. I didn't know what to even make of it. I just shared it with everyone I knew, and then they were like, whoa, I know this guy, and he's like, we made a video on you. I didn't even know he was a Christian. So that was really surreal. And along with that, it was also like people told me that the video might be coming out. I think I was in some I got some DMs on Instagram saying, hey, this guy like he's reading your book. It's like he just sort of shared a picture on his Instagram about muscular Christianity, reading your book, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then like one day someone just messages me and they're like, hey, have you seen this? And I'm like, whoa, 40-minute video about me. So I don't know what else to say other than it was just completely surreal and I couldn't believe it. And I thank him a lot for it. And it really helped. I mean, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for him, right? Yeah. Because, I mean, the book was out for like, it came out in October of last year. But like, I think around December, it got like a surge because I started like messaging some Instagram accounts saying like, hey, can you like promote my book? So I got a bit of a surge in there. And then it sort of just like waned out in like January and February. So I was like, okay, I guess the book is like it's done, no one's really gonna read it anymore. And I just see that video, I'm like, okay, never mind. I guess bring new life to this.
And it was a big bump after he shouted you out and all that.
There was a huge bump, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I don't know, it was just completely surreal. I thank him a lot for it. I still talk to him sometimes here and there. Yeah, and I just thank God for it. Yeah,
that's fire, man. I mean, it just goes to show that like you can be doing something in obscurity and people not necessarily be that hip to it, but it gets in the right hands. And something can get a second, third, fourth wind and really not only help the people who need it, but also help the people who are creating something that people need.
Yeah, I think it's even more relevant now than it was when I first started writing it. Because I feel like more people are into this muscular Christianity, like physical fitness and spiritual fitness thing than they were when I first started writing it. And he's definitely one of them. And I've been checking out his YouTube channel. He has like videos talking about the idea of muscular Christianity in like some sort of like nascent sense, some sort of smaller sense. Although he just didn't see it in some huge compilation of a book, pretty much like I have. Yeah. And I don't know. It was totally surreal. I thank him for it. I thank God for putting the book in his hands. And he said he got it as a gift. I don't know who gave him the gift, but all things work together. Yeah. So
yeah, amen. I mean, I think it's a conversation that hopefully happens more often. Like I think it's strength training and obviously sports as a kid have been so beneficial to me, but I think on a macro level, like I just see how impactful and helpful it can be when someone carves out time. I guess my heart is oftentimes, man, for the folks who don't have the time or don't know how to make the time, or I got family members that work nights and like their life is hard. And I'm just like, yo, you got to chill with what you're eating. Like you need to go on walks. Like you need to come. And it's just, I hurt for those people because I know how much it's been a blessing to lean into strength training. And then I know other people that just, for whatever reasons, we could say it's a mind state. We could say a mindset. We could say it's whatever it is. I just break for those people and go, man, I know the benefits and I want more people to take advantage. And I think it's easier to persuade young men. Like it's easier to persuade like the 18 to 22-year-old, go to the gym. And it's like, yeah, sure. Like I like the gym. I want to be buff, right? But it's like people in different seasons of life that are young parents, young professionals, newlyweds. It's hard trying to get them to see the value and then make the practical commitment of carving out time to do that. So I think what you're doing and what Shreds is doing, it serves as like a great like macro inspiration. And I just hope that like it can go down into the culture, like the deeper Christian culture of like people getting a hold of these ideas and implementing them.
Yeah, I hope so as well. I hope so as well. I think it's something that can really resonate with a lot of people, that a lot of people who, I've gotten like a few DMs from people telling me that, like, not even just like young people, but some older people who just got a hold of the book and then they're like, wow, you've really inspired me to take this more seriously, that to work on this neglected part of my life. And yeah, I understand that it's probably going to appeal more to like younger people. And the habits that you build when thankfully though, the habits that you build when you're younger are usually going to transfer when you're older.
Oh yeah.
So I think I even saw some study that was like most people who work out when they're like 50 years old, they've been working out for years prior to that. It's relatively rare to see someone who just starts working out when they're 60.
Yeah.
Not to say you can't do that or you shouldn't do that, but the good part about this is that starting this from such a young age is going to help a lot of people in the future when they get older, because they're going to have this habit of doing it.
Yeah.
And I mean, for their own good, for elder people, their own good, if they want to live longer, if they want to serve God more, then they should have, not saying everyone needs to be a bodybuilder, of course. They're just saying you need to have some kind of care for your body, and you should be able to have your body function.
Amen. Do you keep up with the broader fitness community online?
Not as much as I used to, because there's a lot of drama nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, generally do. Yeah, generally I do.
Who are some of the people that you like? I'm a big Athlean-X guy, but then I also like total opposite extreme of that, like Coach Craig.
Greg Doucette.
Doucette, you know. What kind of stuff are you keeping up with, and what do you make of like the broader fitness community online?
So I really like the YouTuber, I guess maybe judging by what I said before, I like the YouTuber Bioneer a lot. He talks about a lot of like maximizing the capability of your entire body. He talks about strength training, flexibility, speed, agility, jumping, just overall total fitness. I like that guy a lot. I like Jeff Nippard because his videos are very professional, and he talks about he substantiates his points really well, and he also promotes people to work where they're at, and so he has very flexible sort of mindset in that sense. He's like, okay, if you can do this, if you then do that. If you can't do this, then here's some alternatives. Here's like a 3-day program, a 4-day program, 5-day, 6-day. Here's exercise that's going to keep you doing it for a long time. I used to be very much into like powerlifting, but I guess since I've gotten injured, I don't really care about how much weight I'm lifting anymore.
Yeah.
So I guess that's part of it. And those are the people I like to watch the most. I still watch Athlean-X a bit. I still watch Greg Doucette a bit. But Greg Doucette, he talks about a lot of dramatic stuff, and I'm like, man, I don't even know if I want to know about this stuff.
It's crazy because he talks about so much drama, but then it all like he always has these like tie-ins to his book, his cookbook, and like his programs and stuff. I'm just like, man, the seamless transitions into these things. I think he does a good job. I think his back and forth with you kept up with his back and forth with Mike Israetel, and Mike being on steroids, and Greg trying to get him off steroids and saying he shouldn't compete anymore.
Yeah.
That's been fascinating. What do you make of performance enhancement drugs as a Christian?
Yeah, there's actually a bit of a section in there in my book, but basically, I still have the same opinion. Basically, my opinion is I wouldn't do it. I don't think that it feels wrong to me to do it because I'm not stewarding my body properly. I am not just like physically harming myself, but if people see me and they see me that muscular, if I tell them that I'm on drugs, then they're gonna be like, okay, so I guess that gives me license to take drugs, right? Because there's been an uptick in fitness people in general just taking performance enhancing drugs, as people are so open about it now.
Oh, yeah.
When I first started in fitness, about 2019, 2018, something like that, people didn't talk about their drug use at all. I don't know if you know these people, but like Cali Fitness, I believe his name was. He got like heart problems recently. He admitted he's on drugs, but he used to say he was natural. Even though you look at him, he's like, this guy's obviously not natural.
Have you ever been accused of being not natural?
By some people, back when I was a lot bigger. But
isn't that the greatest compliment?
It was pretty nice. Yeah, I was like, oh, wow, you think I'm not natural? Sweet.
When I had a pretty radical transformation, 2018, 2019, and I remember my wife was hanging out with some of her girlfriends. And I get a call, and she's like, hey, are you on testosterone? And I was like, no. She's like, my friends think you're on testosterone. Are you taking anything? And I was like, no, but babe, this is the sweetest thing you've ever said to me. So I was like, man, I'm all for it. Like, that's a great compliment.
Yeah, some of my high school friends have sort of they didn't straight up accuse me of being on testosterone, but they were like, are you sure like you're not taking testosterone? Yeah. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And then they're like, are you sure? Like, really?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, okay, I believe you, but like, you can tell me if you are, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's okay.
Yeah. Are you taking any, I'm assuming creatine?
I take creatine. Yeah.
I just got back on creatine within the last couple months, and I definitely feel stronger on creatine.
Yeah.
What about I'm not as consistent on this as I should be. What is it called? Ashwagandha, which is supposed to naturally boost your testosterone. It's like a herbal supplement. Have you heard of this stuff?
I have not heard of it.
Yeah, so I take that, but I don't think it's a measurable, massive difference in terms of what it does. But it's fairly popular.
Yeah, I think that probably what's going to help your testosterone more than anything is just getting sleep.
Getting sleep, yeah.
Yeah,
sleep.
the number one way to kill your testosterone is to not sleep.
Yep.
If you have an all-nighter, your testosterone is gonna like cut in half. And if you just don't get enough sleep in general,
Yeah.
I think some people have like gone like a day or two without sleeping, and then they go to the doctor and say, "Oh, I need testosterone because my testosterone's low." The doctor would just give it to them because they're like, "Okay, well, his testosterone levels are like dangerously low." And I'll just give it to him, even though he wasn't sleeping.
Yeah.
So the easiest way to kill your testosterone is to just not do that. There's also some like foods you can eat. I'm not too familiar with this, but there's also some foods you can eat. Generally being in competition and I think another one is also being around women. So
Yeah.
increases your testosterone.
Yeah.
So
What do you make of the healthy at every size movement?
healthy at every size doesn't really exist. It's just I think I can pretty confidently say that unless you're 7'5", being over 300 pounds is probably just not healthy. Like I don't think it's actually possible to be healthy. Like maybe, like even if you have a lot of muscle, like at my shots, how can you get 300 pounds that muscular without taking drugs? I don't know. Maybe it's possible.
But your body, even if you are muscular, your body still doesn't know the difference.
That's
How much
true.
blood it has to pump. Your
Yeah.
heart pumping all that blood to
Yeah.
maintain all of that. Like
your
it's
heart
still
pressure's
not.
good.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's very possible. I understand, like, okay, we want to accept more people. We want to not, make people feel bad about their weight. I understand that, but like actively telling them that it's okay is a step that's a bit too far. I don't think that's really possible.
Yeah, there's
to
a line between like, hey, let's not pick on people, let's not bully people, let's not shame people.
Yeah.
Because we don't know how they ended up where they ended up with regards to where they're physically at. Some folks experience like crazy trauma. People sinned against them. Some people may have gotten into a car accident. Some people may have hormonal issues, which is not that often, but it still happens. And then there's folks that are just, just bad choices, right? And so like all these things are complicated. So I think there's a balance between like, hey, let's not shame, tease, call people fat, right? Dehumanize people, while at the same time, let's not lie to them and tell them that they're healthy, because they're not.
Yeah. There's got to be some kind of line between there.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, from like a scientific standpoint, it's just not possible. And yeah, I understand the motive. I respect the motive. I agree with the motive even, but there's just some kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, some kind of tough love that you have to have at some point that like, okay, you're not healthy though.
Yeah.
Maybe the message should be, you should love yourself enough to like not have yourself die early.
Yeah. That's a great point. But do you think this is culture then influencing institutions? Because now what we're seeing is like they're redoing things like the chart of healthy foods, and they have like Lucky Charms cereal. Have you seen this? And it's ranked higher. It's ranked higher than like ground beef.
Really?
You haven't seen this?
I have not, no.
Okay, I gotta pause it. This is maybe this isn't reached where you guys are at. Food chart, cereal versus ground beef. I'm gonna find this for you real quick. This is hilarious. Let me see if I can find this chart. There it is. Look at that. Like I didn't even have to look very hard. So this is ground beef is ranked 26 to be minimized, right? Below cheddar cheese. Whole eggs fried in butter is a 29, and then as you keep going up, almond M&Ms.
Almond M&Ms
To be moderated.
It's better than eggs.
Yeah, better than eggs. Lucky Charm.
Lucky Charms.
So ground beef and cheddar cheese are beneath Lucky Farms. And then what do you see all the way at the top? You see watermelon, kale, frosted mini wheats.
Frosted mini wheats.
Unsweetened almond milk, which I don't have any issues with unsweetened milk or fruit or non-fat frozen yogurt, whatever. Chocolate-covered almonds, dog. And orange juice with calcium, Honey Nut Cheerios, and dates. Above sweet potatoes, sweet potato fries, chips, egg substitute, skinless breast. Okay, bro, come on. Skinless chicken breast.
Skinless chicken breast should be at the green. I'm just mostly surprised at how egg is so low.
Yes. Well,
Egg is like what in the red?
yeah.
That is
Crazy, right? Ground beef, egg, chicken breast, skinless chicken breast, not fried chicken, is the rating of some of these things is so low. So my question is, when we're talking about healthy advertising, we're talking about all these things, and not to get super conspiratorial, but like, do you think this is culture and trying to be accommodating, impacting institutions, or do you think there's an intentional shift in institutions to impact culture with ridiculous charts like this that are coming out, and they're being funded by government agencies doing research?
I'm not too well versed on this. I'm not 100% sure. I think I can maybe trace back how this happened. I guess maybe I think what probably happened is that there's probably some fat doctors that were like, hey, I want to pretend I'm still healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So they created this idea that you can be healthy at any size, and then that sort of trickled down into, because there's credentials. He has a PhD by his name, so he's everything he says is like gospel, and so maybe that just trickled down to the regular population, and the regular population is they were so into this idea that eventually they went up back into like the top of the institutions. That's probably what I think happened. So maybe it's to answer your question, it'll be the culture influencing the institutions as opposed to the institutions influencing culture. That's kind of where I lean right now. But I haven't looked into this very much. This is just me off the cuff, just saying what feels kind of right.
Yeah. Culture influencing this. This is from an organization called Food Compass, a novel food rating system developed by researchers at Tufts University by evaluating foods across 9 domains and using a unique algorithm to determine a score. We can assign a food compass between 1 and 100. As for the funding, the research was supported by S.D.N.Y, National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, National Institute of Health. The founders had no role in study, conception, or design. So this is funded by some pretty big institutions. But the chart to me is just utterly ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what we're going to do. We are going to go over to our Patreon exclusive segment. We're going to have a conversation with my man Paul about something that's a little too spicy for YouTube. I want to specifically get into, does he think there's an intentional feminization of men happening in culture? Where is this sort of stuff coming from? And some of the other topics are going to be discussed. Take a look at this here. Do you think there's a calculated effort to try and make men more feminine in this culture?
Men created these structures and these formations in society that were so durable that they sort of made themselves, like the fact that people are sort of, for lack of a better word, like overcompensating in a sense with Andrew Tate and then becoming like actually toxic.
What final like words of advice would you have for men that, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, they're trying to figure it out? Where would you tell them to start?
Ruslan.
And he called his 10 servants and delivered to them 10 pounds and said unto them, Occupy till I come. The Occupy Till I Come collection is here at the Blessed God Shop, a collaboration we did with our friend Josh Naidoo from Sword and Pencil. This piece of art is made up of beautiful iconography, telling the story of sowing and reaping, dying to sin, and evangelizing the lost. In this collection, you will find these designs highlighted, such as this Death to Sin t-shirt, which highlights the bold design of hammering a nail through Satan's skull. And on the back, a large print that says discipline is freedom. Now you can find all the regular stuff like high quality printed shirts and Champs printed hoodies, but this time around we also decided to do some women's cut t-shirts as well. And for the first time ever, you can also pick up a beautiful canvas print of the Occupy Till I Come design or the Discipline is Freedom piece. And we also, for the first time ever, got an amazing 500-piece puzzle, which I personally enjoyed getting to sit down, do with my own family, and it sparked some really interesting conversations. And when you put on one of the pieces from this collection, it's a constant reminder that we are here to not just sit back and be apathetic, but to be the hands and feet of Jesus, to help usher in God's kingdom on this side of eternity and to care for the least of these. But this entire collection is only available until September 8th at midnight. So go to blessgod.shop and get yours now.